Feeling like a black sheep, living in society where everybody's happy with their spoon-fed false reality.
One was we're going to talk about, and I should probably just pull my email up here, the one that I sent you. The general concept was that the Declaration of Independence indicated that if you had a grievance, or what you've considered an irresolvable grievance with another party that's governing you, that you can cut those ties.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, are you going to bring us on?
Yep, we're on right now. I just want to test one thing real quick. Okay, I think we're good. We're ready to go anytime you are. I'll do a countdown. 1,
Alrighty.
2, 3, 4, 5. Welcome to the long version with Fletcher Long and Charles Rollo. We have some good current topics to discuss today. We're all in our casual dress because that's the kind of guys we are. You know, we're casual guys. And we have some things that we discussed, last time, but I want to do an extension on those things. And one of those was, I was reading the Declaration of Independence, and there's in the beginning, I think it's the second paragraph, it says that in the event that we have irreconcilable differences with our government, that we can cut ties with that government, which, during those time periods, there was a revolution against the King of England.
Yeah, and I think it's actually in the first part of the Declaration. It says, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. And I'll tell you one reason that comes up is, you may recall the war between the states. Of course, I'm in Kentucky. And Charles, are you in Michigan? Is that where you are?
I'm in Michigan, but I do have roots in the South.
Well, that was one of the main tenets of the southern states' belief that they had a right to rebel. Was it's right there in the Declaration of Independence. We're not doing any more or less than our forefathers did against the British Empire. And we believe that the course of human events, it's become necessary for us to dissolve the political bounds which had previously connected us because of their disagreement about slavery, whether it should be abolished. The impact of slavery on voting, for instance, was a huge issue about whether the slaves would be counted to give one state over another state more representation in the Congress was a huge issue. But it's always been rather curious to me, and I think I'm not the first person to note this, that among the truths that our forefathers declared to be self-evident was the one that men are created equal and are equally endowed with unalienable rights, being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the liberty, unalienable right, did not extend to the slaves over whom they were mastering in the southern states and in open rebellion, or at the time of the Civil War, or even prior, when this declaration was actually entered, in 1776. It's kind of an interesting, if you will, conundrum, yes. Isn't it?
Yeah, and the fact that we actually had that war, and during that time period, the slaves were emancipated from those rules that gave them, chained them, the bonds and chains that they had, in a long time in actually manifesting those things. It took a long time to get those manifested, but the fact that we were able to take that path in itself is, I think, what we really need to keep in mind now with all peoples that we deal with and that are in this country, that there are other types of slavery. I see, when I see a guy who's making is working and making $10,000 a year with a family. I consider that like a financial slavery. But
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of like an indentured servant,
right.
which a lot of people came over to this country under indentured servitude.
But I think that the fact that we took that path to emancipation in itself is an amazing thing that we got together and chose to set people free.
From a historical standpoint, if you're talking about going back, and there's something in the interpretation of constitutional law called the historical test. Several justices throughout the history of the court have been big proponents of this. And the historical test is you take the words and what they would have meant at the time that they would have been uttered, and what was going on at that time would have framed its meaning. And at the time that this was going on, you're talking about a bunch of colonies declaring war with the major power in the European theater, particularly a naval one. And there's an argument to be made, whether anybody finds this interesting or not, that if England was not ending the 100 Years' War with France at the time that we were declaring our independence and trying to assert our emancipation, if you will, from the crown, that we could have never won that engagement. That it was the fact that they couldn't make a full committal of ground forces and naval resources to quell back this revolution. And I think it was always Britain's intent to come back in later and just take us back, which they tried to do in 1812. You know, Charles, I really think we won our independence in 1812. That was where we felt more of the full brunt of a dedicated effort to take us back under the crown.
And they were unsuccessful.
And we're unsuccessful. Yeah, I mean, that was more noteworthy to me as far as a military achievement or even a naval achievement, the fact that we were able to remain free after the War of 1812 when England came back, not diverted, with their attention undiverted, and tried to take the colonies back and failed. Would have been, to me, the real winning of independence. But it is, you know, and you may be wondering why, what are we having, a history day on the long version? No, we're not. All of these issues are very relevant today, because there are people that I've heard for the first time in my lifetime. There's always been I'm 50 years old, Charles, and there's always been kind of talk that maybe this group or that group would secede. I think Texas at one time threatened secession at one time. But, I mean, you hear more of that talk now, more of that talk. You've got a real disconnect between certain factions in this country and others.
There's a lot of ideology that people are resting their laurels on at this point, and the reality parts of existing in this country seem to be going by the wayside, like, dinner and where we've been and where we're going to. And I hear a lot of argument. I just sort of backed away from a lot of these ideological arguments, because quite frankly, that's what they are. Ideologies are ideas, and they're not completely, they're half-baked a lot of times.
You know, Charles, this what I'm about to read to you now from the Declaration are words that I believe you will hear again. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, which the ends they're talking about is governments instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, or to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. That is an overt statement that if we don't like what you're doing, we can do something else.
Yes.
Anyway, like I was saying before the interruption, that those words that I just read, I think you're going to hear quoted more and more now, because those are the exact words that most people believe in views in us are right, maybe even an unalienable one, that to insist on a government
that derives their powers from from our consent. And when they no longer have our consent, that we have a right, when we feel the government has become destructive of the ends of being governed and deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that it's our right to alter or to abolish it. And I think you're going to see, and I tell you, I really think a lot of this you will see vis-a-vis abortion, which tends to really be a divisive topic. I think you can see this if the Mueller report were to come out, and there are certain people that would rather overthrow the government, I believe, than have it run by someone other than their selection to run it.
Their team, yeah.
So I really think that some of these things are pretty scary, if you will.
And the reason that initially I had brought up that subject was because I am concerned about civil war in America. Because not only do we have people that do not like what the government's doing in both parties, but then they don't like each other either. So we really got, like 4 groups working here, and eventually they're going to, I'm afraid that they will come to blows in a big way.
I have never seen in my 50 years, at any time that I've been alive, groups of people so willing to espouse their disdain to downright hatred for others. It has become almost fashionable. You talk about the mass killing in New Zealand, targeting Muslims by a white supremacist group. I didn't even know New Zealand had such groups. If you'd have told me, Charles, that they had a high concentration of Muslim New Zealanders, I don't think I would have known that either, right, other than the 2 largest religious factions in existence on the globe are either Muslim or Christian, I believe to be the case. But I think that you're right to be concerned about it, Charles. I think it's something about which to be concerned.
And if you look at history and go back to history, many times revolutions end up status quo. You just get a different set of corrupted leaders in power. And so the whole thing is a waste of life and property and liberty.
I wrote a book. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's entitled The Long Version, actually. Or For What It's Worth, The Long Version is the title of the book. And in the book, I wrote an assemblage of essays. And one of the essays in which that I published was an essay that started out talking about all of the different elements of an empire that was in full crumble. And I was listing these things in order to show the similarity between this empire and the crumbling American empire was my position, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what I was describing seemed like I was talking about America today in the essay. It really came from a book entitled The Fall of the Roman Empire.
Well, I was going to say that. You just beat me to it. Yep.
And if you go back and look at all of the things that the Romans decried as leading to the fall of their empire, all of those things seem to exist, or some of the same things of which we are decrying or complaining today. Right. And it's a pretty striking and scary model. Charles, is there anything today or anything about today that would surprise you? Because it's amazing to me that we have become so utterly, forgiving of certain transgressions now. Have we been too exposed, you think, to certain stimuli that it no longer creates in us any type response at all?
Well, it's like being in the heat of the battle or in the heat of an argument. Sometimes things are said and done because of your strong feelings, but desensitization, being desensitized to these things because we're exposed to them so much, is true. And I posted something, it was yesterday, I think, that I hope every morning that I can get up and on my Facebook page, I can see that someone has come up with some real solutions to problems rather than blaming some individual somewhere with no solutions. Because that's what I see. I see it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. And then, but no one says this is how we can solve this. This is how we can get this problem solved. And I just don't see it. And these are people my age, which are just a little bit older than you and me. And it's like, I don't see an active intelligence going on.
Well, less than a month ago, I'd say about maybe 3 or so weeks ago, Charles, the Cheat Sheet is an online kind of a publication, and Megan Elliott wrote an article for the Cheat Sheet entitled "Secession: These States Think They Could Survive Without the United States," which is really kind of what we're talking about here, based on the declarations that we have gone over. And she says, you and I have already noticed this, maybe I stole it from her, but she says that it seems that Americans are more at odds than ever. In the weeks after the last presidential election, a record high 77% of people surveyed by Gallup said the country was divided. One sign of the fractured political climate was an increase in people talking seriously about seceding from coast to coast. Dissatisfied citizens are wondering whether it's time to cut ties with our supposedly indivisible republic. Not everyone takes the talk seriously, even though they certainly should. But there are, she's listed, the following states have at least discussed seceding. California. You may remember that after Trump's being elected, panicked Californians proposed a Calexit, right? Because, Hillary Clinton had won the state by a considerable margin. Texas. The Republic of Texas ceased to exist back in 1846 when it became a state in the United States. It spent 10 years before as a sovereign nation. Some people believed it was time for a comeback. A quarter of Texans surveyed by public policy polling in 2016 said they thought it was time to leave the United States. A quarter, Charles, 1 in 4. Trump supporters were even more in favor of secession. 37% wanted to kiss the United States goodbye. Hawaii, which there's an argument to be made that Hawaii is kind of a sovereign nation anyway. They had a monarchy that was overthrown in 1893 in a coup organized by sugar planters. For years, Native Hawaiians have been lobbying the federal government for recognition similar to given to the Native American tribes. Some of them want to go any further. They believe that the annexation of Hawaii in 1893 was illegal and that the United States is an occupying force. Alaska voted for statehood in 1959. Some people in Alaska, Charles, are pretty unhappy with this. There's an Alaskan Independence Party, which is the third largest political party in that state. They have more than 15,000 registered voters, which is a pretty large segment of Alaska. It's pretty remotely populated. They have advocated for a new vote on seceding from the United States. Vermont, Charles, wants to leave. Did you know this? They've always had a strong independent streak, but a vocal group of Vermonters have spent the past decade or so advocating for secession, noting that the Green Mountain State already had one go at independence from 1777 to 1791. They wanted a second Vermont Republic. In a 2007 poll, 13% of voters supported secession. They currently receive about $2 billion a year from Washington to pay for everything from highways to school lunches. New Hampshire would like to secede. They have a libertarian party that has endorsed the idea of they're calling it NH-exit, right? Just the Brexit, now the Calexit, now the NH-exit. And Oregon and Washington And in fact, the entire Pacific Northwest has kind of bannered about that they want to join California in exiting. They want to call it the Republic of Cascadia.
I think I have an idea there. We could get with Canada, and we could trade the East Coast for like Alberta. We could do it like a switch, a trade-off. You can have California, Oregon, and Washington, and we'll take Alberta and maybe another province. I mean,
Well,
there's been some talk in Canada about the same type of thing. Could Alberta be a part of the United States?
Well, the funny thing is, Charles, is they said these 7 states were interested in secession. They actually listed 8 states, but they're forgetting North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, and Montana. All 5 of those states have Lakota Sioux tribal members that have argued that they should be fully recognized as an independent country. The Republic of Lakota has already sought recognition. Florida, they're forgetting Florida. Florida, if you've ever been to Key West, there's a sign welcoming you to the Conch Republic. Back in 1982, the Border Patrol created a roadblock on the only highway in and out of the Florida Keys. Very long stretch of road that goes over the ocean. I'm sure you've been there. Residents tried to get the checkpoint removed, and when they failed, they declared themselves an independent country and announced a symbolic war on the United States. So there's even more states that have contemplated secession than this article written 3 weeks ago even told us.
One final thing I'll say on that, and then I'd like to move on to our other subject, was why don't we just get all 50 states together and then throw Washington, D.C. out, and then we'll make our own a new one.
Well, I'll tell you this. Anytime that the states act with any degree of autonomy, which is violative of what's called in constitutional law the supremacy clause, any express power that is not given the states is reserved in the federal government, and any federal power that conflicts with the state power is supreme over the state power, is the supremacy clause. And the reservation, I've taken 2 clauses and made them one. It's the supremacy clause and the reservation clause. But any time that the states act with any degree of autonomy, it impacts detrimentally the federalist powers. The centralization of power in the federal government. It makes the federal government weaker. And there's a lot of one thing that I want to remind people that watch this podcast is you may think that these Democrats and Republicans hate each other, because they certainly go at each other really hard on television, but these people are all friends behind our backs.
Yes.
This fight that they put on is for show. They're doing this for show. They're all buddies. And you can't really trust any of this, acrimony and adversarial sparring any more than you can from lawyers. It was always the big joke that lawyers fight in the courtroom and then go have lunch.
Yeah.
Which became less and less true, which probably ruined the legal profession. But people started taking it so very personally. But these politicians, it really is we and them. Yeah. It really is.
I always felt that way. I mean, I should say I felt that way in the recent years, that government in and of itself, the whole group, is not my friends.
Oh no, it is they against we, and we are losing.
Yes,
we are losing. And really, if you want to get right down to it, the scariest thing to me, Charles, is that we can't seem to beat these money interests, these special interests. We can't seem to beat. Government is still bought, isn't it? You get these PACs that come in there, and I always used to say, as a fun thing, and I'll do this with you, Charles, but let's say that you've just been elected to Congress, okay? And you've made me your chief of staff. So I want to applaud you, first of all, for a very wise appointment of me as your chief of staff. But your first day in office, I come in, I go, look, Congressman Rollo, I mean, here's the deal, okay? I got this guy out here. And, if you're going to affect any change, you got to stay in office, right? So we're going to have to continue to run. It's only a 2-year term. We're going to have to run even when you're up here doing your work. We're always running. We're in a perpetual campaign. Well, I got these guys out here from the National Infant Sex Society, and they want to give $3 million to your reelection campaign. And the one bad thing, Charles, is they all want to have sex with babies, okay? But they want to give $3 million to your reelection campaign. And they've got these tenets. They've got a bill that they want you to propose. They're going to give you the $3 million. All you have to do is get this bill passed, right? And the bill, Charles, says that teachers should be paid more money. Now, Congressman Rollo, that was one of your big tenets you ran on, was that better pay for teachers, right? So you're all for that. They've got a tenet of this bill that they want to rein in interest rates and gasoline prices. Well, you're really in favor of that, Congressman. I don't need to remind you what you told the Michiganians when you were running for office, that you would rein that in. And they go through this thing, Charles. They go through a list of about 20 things. And the 21st thing in the bill is, oh, yeah, they want to legalize pedophilia.
Right.
And that's number 21. And that's the pork barrel, if you will. That's the one for which Reagan wanted the line item of veto, remember?
Yes.
And I look at you as your chief of staff and I go, now, Charles, I know you don't want to be the pedophilia guy. I get that. But look at these other 20 things that they want. And by the way, they're going to give you $3 million for your reelection campaign, right? And, you really do, if you're going to change the system like you told the Michiganians when you ran, you've got to do it from up here, Charles. You can't change the system if you can't keep gaining election, And you start telling yourself things like, I'm a good guy, and I'm really going to do a lot for Michigan up here. And, I guess I'm just going to have to play the game a little,
Right.
But one of these days I won't. One of these days I won't. But right now I got to kind of have to play. I don't want to be like Beto, but one of these days I won't play the game. But right now I have to play the game.
Yeah,
right?
we can run that money through other organizations and sort of wash it up a little bit and clean it.
We'll do a lot of good with it, Charles. We'll do a lot of good with it. We'll send $30 to the Humane Society. You love animals. And what happens is that you rationalize the whole thing because you want the $3 million.
Yeah.
And you can overlook the fact that the $3 million is coming from a bunch of pedophiles.
Right.
And you talk yourself and you go, well, these other 20 things, I did run on these, and that's how they get you. And the thing that always scared me, and I'll be honest, I really didn't think Trump wanted to be president of the United States, even when he gained the party's nomination. I thought what Trump was going to do was he was going to cut a back deal with Hillary Clinton, promising to throw the race if she would give the Trump organization the money to build this wall. What I kept thinking was going to happen, Charles, and it shows you how crazy I am.
I thought he was going to bail too. I thought he was going to bail out.
I thought he was going to go to Hillary and go, look, Hillary, I've always liked you. I mean, I invited you and Bill to my wedding. I'll let you be president, but I want you to give me the contract on the wall. I want you to build the wall, and I want the contract to build the wall. And I want to put Trump every 15 yards down that wall.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I thought that he was after. And apparently I was wrong. And maybe he was after that. It just went too far, and bam, he ended up president. But
yeah.
I thought he wanted to build the wall is what I thought he wanted,
Yeah, we'll see. Having said that, I want to conclude that part of our conversation and ask you this. How much does it cost to get into college these days?
Well, it's interesting, Charles. That's a good question. It depends on whom your parents are and who they're willing to grease. But Tennessee, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which is my alma mater, has just passed something that says that if you income qualify, they're going to let you go to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville for free.
Wow.
How about that?
That's pretty amazing.
You know who's really, really hurt themselves in this college admission scandal? You know who's really come out of this looking the worst out of everybody involved in this scandal? The woman from Full House.
Oh,
The aunt.
yeah.
I think her name is Lori Laughlin.
Yeah, her face is pasted everywhere now.
You want to know why? Her daughter is a piece of crap. Have you seen the videos? First of all, and I don't like talking poorly of kids, but this kid is not a kid. I mean, you're talking about somebody that has millions of Twitter followers, you know. And what is her name? She's a public. To me, she is a public figure. Okay, she's not really, and I'm not talking about. I think she has 2 daughters. But she's got one who got on the internet and basically said that she is it Olivia Jade? Is that the one, Olivia Jade Giannulli?
I'm unable to look at it right now because
I don't think it's Laughlin. I don't think her name's Laughlin. Okay, no. But she got on the internet and it's really been terrible. But she got on there and basically said, I just want to go for game day and the parties, you know.
I did. I listened to about maybe 30 seconds of that video. My ears started to bleed and I had to turn it off.
Well, it is Olivia Jade Giannulli is her name. I'm probably not pronouncing the last name correctly. But she's Lori Laughlin, who's probably a stage name. She had made some YouTube celebrity and social media posts as a celebrity. And the reason why her name is Giannulli is this Laughlin woman is married to that famous fashion designer, Massimo Giannulli. And I'm sure I'm probably screwing the name up. But you can probably tell from my garb, Charles, that I'm not really big into fashion. But she goes by Olivia Jade. She's in her first year at USC. And she has 2 million YouTube subscribers. Here's what she said in her video. This is from a transcript. I don't know how much of school I'm going to attend. I do want the experience of like game days, partying. I don't really care about school, as you guys all know. She later posted an apology video saying, I'm sorry for the comments. A lot of people like to attack me for the way I've grown up because it's really different from a lot of people. And so anything I say that's remotely ignorant or bratty or something that I genuinely don't mean, it gets so much backlash.
Well, I would argue the word remotely. it's right on there. Yeah. So, and what gets me, zooming out on this thing is on this collusion that went on was the intricacy of it all about testing and, fake photos about people who are doing sports that didn't do sports. And the amount of collusion was really astounding.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Okay. There was a guy that I knew growing up in where I grew up, who, and I'm going to try to phrase this pretty carefully so nobody figures out who this is. Growing up, Charles, I was pretty sure that this guy was slow intellectually. He just seemed like he was slow. His dad was a big booster of a college and a graduate of and a big booster of a professional school that was chartered under that college. And when I found out that this guy had been admitted to this particular professional school, I was absolutely shocked. There is a very small chance in my mind that he gained admission to this school legitimately. And so what they have described in this scam about rich people using their wealth and power and influence to game, and that's what they're doing, to game their kid into an institution for which they lack the scores, intellect, or abilities at which to thrive, has been going on for a long time. What my question to you is do you think that we're catching it, we're just catching it now because of all the many avenues that we have to record our poor conduct, right? There have been a lot of things that have gone on in the past that went unprosecuted because you couldn't really prove it. But nowadays, in social media platforms, computers, cameras, video cameras, everybody in the country is a member of the media now, Charles. They're all media members.
That's right.
There's a camera everywhere you go. You're almost 24/7 being watched by something other than our creator. And I wonder if that access to information in people's lives hasn't made it easier to catch what people do in the shade. You know, Brandeis was a famous Supreme Court justice, and his first name is escaping me presently, but he once said that the most powerful of all disinfectants was sunlight. Nowadays, there doesn't appear to be any shade. Is that lending itself to why we're catching all this now?
I do, and I think we're moving into a era where there will be no shade anywhere, and as you put it, and one example I'll use, and maybe in a future show we can talk about this, is the internet and a new technology that's becoming pervasive is blockchain technology, which basically just stores everything that's done and it cannot be erased because it's stored in so many places. I really think that people who make mistakes, who do, let's use a example of someone who is drives a car, kills somebody, and goes to jail for it and spends his time in jail. But when he comes out of jail, everyone knows or can find out what he did and hold that against him, even though he's paid his time.
Well,
so I agree with you there. The way records are kept now, they're no longer in a file cabinet in the corner. They're on a computer or on the internet where many people can look at them or even hack into them and find them. Wikipedia, or was it WikiLeaks? I mean, you can find out all kinds of stuff on people if you just know how to do
it. Well, you take the comments attributed to Donald Trump to Billy Bush during the election about grabbing vaginas and the like. I mean, how many men do you believe, and this doesn't make it right, but how many men do you believe have made similar comments? That have run for president that we just never knew. And if they didn't make the comment, they certainly had that attitude, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, how many misogynists do you suppose have been elected president of the United States in the illustrious?
It goes way back. Yeah.
It's kind of like this cheating scandal. There's been all kinds of rich people that have cheated their kids into schools they had no business attending. You know what's amazing to me is why didn't they just do it the old-fashioned way and just give USC a building?
Yeah.
You know, I had a friend that I grew up with in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, whose family had gifted a dormitory to the University of Alabama, which I don't know why in the world you would ever want to cheat your kid into that freaking school. You know, I mean, it seems to me like that if you have neurons firing, you probably could gain admission into Alabama regardless. But that aside, I don't want to start too much pantheon of fandom, but they had given a building, a dormitory, to the University of Alabama. Well, they kept applying to Alabama. They all gained admission. I mean, it just seems to me how dumb is Olivia Jade that they've got to pay $500,000 to get her in USC.
Yeah, and in which case, I have in some of the video comments that I've seen on this is that a lot of these universities, the reason people go to them is because they are social clubs and you can make the right connections.
I was unaware that USC was such a prestigious academic school anyway.
Me too. I didn't think it was.
I'm going to look it up and see if there's a listing of where they rank among best colleges. They're probably, I mean, I don't doubt that they're a good school. And I kid Alabama. Alabama ranks pretty high academically among institutions in the Southeastern Conference anyway, as far as admission standards and test scores it takes to gain admission and stuff. So they're not quite the brain dead hicks that I wanted to portray them as being. You know, sorry, I'm a Tennessee fan. You know, I'm not going to like them. You see, rank among peer universities. I mean, I was unaware that Alabama, that Southern Cal was someplace, I mean, that you would have to cheat into.
Yes.
Let me see here. Its tuition is $56,225 a year. Wow. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if it ranks. It is tied for 22nd, which is pretty good, among national universities. It is number 37. Let me see the it's number 37 in best value schools and number 5 for best schools for veterans. I'll give you some other ranks. NYU is ranked below them at number 30. Stanford is number 7. Cal Berkeley is number 22. So it is tied with Cal Berkeley among national universities. So I was wrong in my presumption that they weren't really that good. They're quite good, actually. They got the number 9 in entrepreneurship, number 7 in accounting, 12 in international business, 11 in management, 6 in real estate, number 24 in engineering programs. So looks to me like it's a pretty prestigious school, much more prestigious than I would have thought.
Right. Is Alabama showing up there anywhere?
Well, I'll have to look them up. Let's see. Let's see. Just for giggles. Let's see where the University of Alabama. Among peer universities. Let me see here. The one we're not going to look up is Tennessee. I refuse to.
We're gonna hide that.
Yeah, we're not looking that up because I don't want to know the answer. Alabama's not ranked any. They're not even in Southern Cal's league. They are ranked. Let me look at these. 129th. Is that right? Yes. They rank 129th among the top rated universities. Not great. I mean, not terrible. I don't know how many universities are there. 300.
God, I have no idea.
And now you see why no one cheated their way into Alabama.
Yeah, it wasn't on the list.
They weren't on the list. Okay, we're looking up Tennessee. I'm curious.
Right, here we go.
You know, I can promise you I did not cheat my way into Tennessee. And I'm about to show you why that would have been unnecessary.
The truth is coming out here. I want everybody to pay attention.
Yeah, I'm scared of that. Among peer universities. Let's see what it is. What do you think is going to happen to these people, though, really? The people that have been, well, hello, number 46.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, hello. Ranked quite a bit higher than Alabama. Wow. Number 46 among all public universities. How about that, buddy?
Yeah, that's not bad. That's good.
Best colleges. This is from U.S. News and World Report, okay? Number 1, Princeton University. Number 2, Harvard. 3, Columbia. MIT is 4. University of Chicago is 5. Yale is 6. Stanford 7th. Duke 8th. Penn 9th. Johns Hopkins 10th. Northwestern's 11th. California Institute of Technology is 12th. Dartmouth is tied for 12th with CIT. Where's your school? You want me to look up your school?
So
Vanderbilt is tied for 14th with Brown.
might not even be on the list, but I graduated from Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan. It's not really a national. I don't think you'd call it a national university.
There's Cal Berkeley is tied for 22nd with Southern Cal. Carnegie Mellon, number 25. They're tied with University of Virginia. So Southern Cal ranks above UVA. Would not have thought that. How about Tennessee coming in at 44?
Wow, that's a relief.
They've gone way up since I went there. I'm pretty sure that the only thing required for admission to Tennessee in my day was respiratory function.
Right, the mirror test.
Yeah.
He's breathing, let him in.
Ton of people tied at number 46, which is where Tennessee is. Tennessee is tied with schools like Pepperdine, UGA, Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, University of Texas. So anyway, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I have not found Oakland.
Yeah, it's probably not going to see it on the list there, but we'll look it up and review it next show.
So it looks to me like that maybe I should have been cheated in there. But you can see that Alabama ranks really low, 129th.
Well, you're vindicated.
Yes, everything I wanted. But what do you think about the scandal? I mean, first of all, can we say that it's disgusting?
Well, I would say
it's
this.
Disgusting that they've cheated their way into school, into gaining admission into a school, and prevented someone that was more qualified and deserving from gaining that spot. I think it's disgusting.
I think that, yeah, when they cheated other people as well. You know, they didn't just cheat to get in. And the other thing that I think is that, you know, given the fact that people want a level playing field, and what we read in the Declaration of Independence about being created equal with equal endowments, that sort of just flies in the face of that kind of concept. And what does it do in general to our, I mean, if it doesn't seem like this is like wide scaled, I would think most of the university students get in there based on their performance. But what if this got to be more prevalent? What would that do to our country and our educational system?
Well, I think it's pretty prevalent now. I think it's more prevalent than we realize. I think it is exceedingly prevalent. The real warfare in America to me is the haves and the have-nots, the income disparity, the rich versus the rest is where the real divide is drawn. And America is not a meritocracy. It's almost never been a meritocracy. I mean, it shouldn't be any surprise that these actors have done what they've done to gain admission to schools their children were not qualified to which to be admitted. Because look at how nepotistic Hollywood is. I mean, when's the last time you saw someone in Hollywood that really was a self-made man and isn't related to very well-placed people within the entertainment industry. It's one of the most reputed to be nepotistic industries there is, and it's got a tremendous standard of living that comes attenuate with engagement in that industry. So I don't know that it's very surprising, frankly. And you're about to learn the difference between justice meted out to rich people versus poor people, as I don't think anything's going to happen to any of these people.
Yeah, I think that's quite possible. They'll get a slap on the hand, and then that will, be the end of that. It's unfortunate that things do work out that way, that people who are less prominent or less wealthy get far harsher treatment than those that are celebrities and wealthy people.
Well, from the dawn of time, I mean, it's been that way. It's a wonderful utopia that we created in our mind about unalienable rights and people admitted to equal justice and equal liberty and equal entitled and equal and going as far as your industries and talents permit, unfettered by being royal or unroyal. But it's a fantasy. I mean, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's never existed. One of the funniest things about the "Make America Great Again" mantra that of which Trump is such an ardent supporter is not conceptually, because I think it would be great for America to be great, but I don't know that we've ever been really great. And I don't want to be the guy, I don't want to be that guy that gets ostracized for it. But you look back and we've done some horrendous things in America, from the institution of slavery to the deterrent of Koreans during the Korean War conflict, and the Japanese in World War II, the internment camps, to separating babies from their families at the border and putting them in internment camps. We have been a people that have been capable of doing terrible, terrible things, and have been capable and willing to perpetrate terrible atrocities. So I don't, as far as this perception that we're all equally admitted to justice or to the university, I don't know that we've ever been equally admitted to either. I think it is still the greatest land in the world. I think that this is a place where you have the at least opportunity or the ability or the potential to come from nothing and become something. But I don't think that happens every day either. I think a lot of the people, there's an old saying that someone used to say that that guy's so dumb, he doesn't realize he was born on third base. He thinks he hit a triple.
Yeah.
You ever heard that said of someone?
Something similar to that, but not quite that one.
Well, there's a ton of people in this country born on third base who think they're great hitters.
Yeah.
And but there are some people that hit triples.
Yeah, there's some people out there that actually do it. Yeah.
But don't you think the number of triples hitters has decreased greatly, Charles, over the years?
Oh, yeah.
Since the imposition of the income tax, for instance, which was really meant to take private wealth out of private hands and redistribute it.
Yeah, I've seen a shift in the ability of people in business and other areas to actually make intelligent decisions. I mean, I see people that are in high positions doing things that I'm like, what were you thinking when you did that? You're supposed to be a highly intelligent individual with lots of responsibility and able to complete these tasks in an efficient and good manner, and you're just screwing it all up. And why is that? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this. If you ever want to hear someone tell you from where their every dollar came and none of it was self-made, represent a man in a divorce proceeding against his wife, whose wife's trying to gain 50% of the marital assets, and sit in the deposition and listen to him talk about how their marital property was really not property attained during the marriage, but had all been gifted to him from his family. Yeah. That's your self-made men, when they get their deposition taken in a divorce case, turn in to the biggest born-on third basers you ever saw. There was this guy that I represented once in a divorce case in Clarksville. He was one of the wealthiest people in that town. And he was the biggest braggart. You never saw a guy brag like this cat. You know, he was the kind of obnoxious asshole, for lack of a better word, that when you'd say somebody's got a lot of money, he would cryptically and smart out. He would ask like a smart aleck. He'd say, "Well, how much is a lot of money?" You know, again, asserting to you that his superiority.
Yeah.
He really derived. You really, in law, when I was formerly an attorney, you really do represent quite a few special assholes. You really do. But this guy really perpetually wanted to reassert and reassert his financial superiority. He really derived all of his self-worth from how much money he was worth, right? So, I mean, he was the consummate self-made man. To hear him talk, I'll never forget defending him in his divorce case. He had a father that left him like $1 million or gave him $1 million, which is in Clarksville, Tennessee,
Yeah.
you know, in the early 70s. But his father like gifts him $1 million when he's like 22 years old, Charles. And according to him, every dollar that they made over that 39 years all came from that gift. I mean, he wasn't self-made at all. If you listen to him give his deposition testimony in a proceeding where he was trying to limit his wife's ability to get any of the money. Quite a different story from what he would tell around the bar at the country club, right?
Right.
I mean, he had turned into a completely different person. He had gone from a self-made man to his daddy's bitch. You know, he was daddy's bitch when the woman was trying to get some money from him, right?
Right. Well, that's because his self-worth was so wrapped up in that capital.
I've seen husbands in divorce proceedings that were willing to say anything to hang on to their money. Yeah. That it was appalling to them that they might have to share in the marital estate with a woman that they had just spent the last 40 years creating, right? It was just, they were appalled that they had to do this. Divorce brings out the very worst in us, Charles.
It does. But I already told my wife if she wants to get rid of me, she can have it all. It's all hers.
I used to counsel people, when I was a lawyer, I used to counsel people that you don't really want a divorce until you're ready to walk out naked.
Yeah.
If you're sitting around taking inventory of what should be yours versus hers, maybe y'all need to try to work it out.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the
If you're
best way.
concerned about the property you would lose, you're not ready to get a divorce, because you don't want a divorce until the sight of that person, male or female, repulses you to the extent that you'd be willing to leave without a stitch on your back.
Yeah.
If you're going to stick around and fight over property, then you guys, because there's a thin line between love and hate. You may hate this person now. Obviously loved them once. You might ought to contemplate whether you could cross over that thin line yet again, cross back over to love from hate. But the opposite of love, Charles, is indifference. The opposite of love is not hate. Hate and love are not opposites. They are pretty close on the lineal sphere of emotions. I threw that in. That's even off topic, but you're welcome. You can have that for free.
Okay, we'll include that one. Hey, you know what? We're running short on time here, so we need to wrap up the show. And you got any ideas for the next show?
No, but I'm sure between now and next.
Feeling like a black sheep, living in society where everybody's happy with their spoon-fed false reality.